Welcome to Cloud on Air, live webinars from Google Cloud. We're hosting webinars daily. You're watching Grow with Google Cloud. My name is Matt Cowger, and joining me today is Reuben Thompson from Gospel Technologies. Today, we'll be talking about how to spin up a GKE-Native solution for secure data sharing in minutes. You can ask questions anytime on the platform, and we have Googlers standing by to answer them. Let's get started. Like I said, my name is Matt Cowger. I run the Startup Architects program here within Google Cloud. We have a global program. It's aimed at enabling startup founders and developers to build amazing companies on Google Cloud. We work with companies all the way from ideation, when they have nothing besides a garage and a couple people, all the way up to Series A startups with funding to go. We have a ton of different ways that we offer support, but three key ways. First, access to product and credits, all the way up to even $100,000 in credits on Google Cloud for qualified startups. Next, we have access to office hours and technical support from people like me and my staff all around the world to make sure that you build the thing that is right for you at the right time, at the right scale. Lastly, we offer access to community and training with events with Googlers, other CTOs of other startups, and even the ability to learn a little bit about the business side of what you're doing. We've taught people how to read term sheets and cap sheets, as well as connected them to their partners in other startup ecosystems. If you'd like to learn more, please visit us online at cloud.google.com/startups. With that, I'd like to introduce Reuben Thompson from Gospel Technologies. Reuben, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. I'm Reuben Thompson. I run technology at Gospel. I've been with the company more or less since the beginning, so about a little more than 2 years at the moment. So I look after most of our technical stuff, operations, software development, et cetera, et cetera. Before that, I was with Experian for a number of years, where I ran a lot of the advertising products from a technical perspective. So Gospel, though, I think what Gospel's about is helping companies share data securely without losing control. We live in a world where companies want to get the benefit of sharing data with partners, with suppliers, maybe sometimes even monetizing that data, but they don't always want to take the inherent risk that comes from losing control. If we look at the world today, we see that there is a data breach every day. There's something terrible happens to people's personal information every day. And we need to see a change in how people use data. We need to see people take control back of that. And Gospel helps bring a level of mathematical assurance to that and a level of unbreakability to that we maybe haven't seen with other products before. So fundamentally, we're a shared enterprise data layer where companies make decisions about how data that they're working together on together. And that is a fundamental change to how it's happened before, because there's no way that our consensus about what those decisions are can be worked around. It's mathematically enforced, and we use a somewhat different form of blockchain to maybe what you've seen before, distributed ledger, in order to do that. And that actually gives us a completely immutable, auditable history of every read and write operation on that data. And you can steal one of our nodes, and you're not going to read any of the PII out of it without the agreement of the others. And we try and make that as easy to slot in and as easy to get as close to the data as we possibly can.
That's fascinating. I've always wondered how we can effectively share data. Can you show me what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. It just so happens I have a demo set up here. So I think a lot of people looking at this will recognize what we've got on the screen here. This is the marketplace within Google Cloud Platform. It's a wonderful resource, and it's something that we run a lot of things like Jenkins from. But what you'll find in the Kubernetes apps section is, if I scroll down a little bit here, there's an awful lot of very exciting software, and right in the middle there is Gospel Technology. And what I'm going to show us how to do is how to spin up a test system with Gospel, so just a few nodes within your own cluster. You can also use this to spin up production clusters as well, although you will need a license from us to do that in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to start off there. I'm just going to hit the configure button. Now, what that will do is take me through to a screen where I can enter a few basic bits of information. You'll see that I've already got a cluster in the Europe West 6 area set up here. I'm going to use that one because it takes a few minutes to set up an a cluster. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some new namespace within GKE Kubernetes itself, just so I can keep this separate. And let's just call that GKE as well. If you need to worry about service accounts, you will already know what you need to do with that bottom box. If you don't, leave it as it is. It's set up very well as it is. So I'm going to just hit deploy there, and actually that's going to go away, and it's going to start spinning up some containers for us so we can get the installer up and we can get that running. Now, this is a uniform experience at this point with other things. As I say, when we spun up Jenkins, it looked very similar. Crikey, it's done that already. So we're just going to wait for the service to come up so we can actually log in and move forward with that.
While we're waiting, does this actually run on GKE clusters on Google Cloud?
Absolutely.
Does this run on my cluster or on your cluster?
This runs on your cluster.
Oh.
So you keep control and ownership of your data. This is very important because it means that you're in control of how your company's part of those decisions is made. It means that you're not ceding control to somebody else. You're not trusting somebody else to make those decisions. You are making those decisions with your partner. And that's a very important thing for this. And I think anybody who's listening who's set up blockchain-based solutions previously will know it can be somewhat challenging. I've heard stories of people spending weeks trying to get their config right on some of the more enterprise applications there. And what we've aimed to do by building this into Marketplace is to take all that complexity out. So whether you're running out a demo like we're going to be doing today, or whether you're going to a production deployment, really either way, it's an extremely straightforward experience. And
can I spin up a dedicated cluster using GKE just for this purpose, or do I need to use something existing?
So it's up to you. I mean, a lot of companies out there will have, I don't know, a dev GKE cluster, and obviously when you go to production, you might want to put it in its own. Use that. If you haven't got one, this is an excellent opportunity to have a go with the Marketplace. I believe you guys have got some excellent sign-up incentives as well. So it's a very good way of getting up and running quickly, and creating a cluster is something that's exceedingly straightforward to do. Now, it looks like we've got a service, so let's see if we can come through and log into this. We've got an IP address. This is an exciting moment. Now, this is perfectly normal because this is a private certificate. I think we can trust it since we just set that up. And what that's going to do is that's going to load the Gospel installer. Now, you'll see that there's two options here, either the quick start demo environment, which is what we're going to do, or that live Gospel node. So if you go into production, if you're maybe running up something where you're using real data, that's the way to go. But today, we're just going to go down this quick start route. And obviously, there's the usual warnings. And there's one question: do we want a public IP? I think we want a public IP today.
I think it's probably safe.
I think we could go either way, but we'll go with that. And let's go. And when I click yes, that's going to go off, and internet permitting is going to go and deploy us a number of components. And actually, if we expand that, we'll see it's actually building specifically what we need for this as we speak. Now, this takes a few minutes to come up because it's got to do a whole bunch of stuff here. So,
are these individual pods running within GKE?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've created a number of disks there. We've created some deployments and daemon sets that represent the parts of the network that we're setting up. So much like you may have seen with other blockchains, there are peers. So we've spun up 3 here. Normally you'd run one of them yourself and other people would run the others, but it's good for the purposes of what we're doing here to do that. We've run up a certificate authority so we can identify people. And oh crikey, it's getting there. So it's told us it's sent everything off. So it will just be starting the last few of the services, and you'll see there's a few demonstration accounts there now. I think we're just waiting for the CA to come up, and then we will be good to go. So that shouldn't be more than another moment.
And waiting for a CA, it is not the first time I've had to wait for a certificate authority.
No. Oh, well, we got half of it, so that's a step forward. Yeah, this is like anything. I mean, Kubernetes is a very resilient way of running services, so we have to start them in the right order here, but once they're up, we can knock things over as we see fit, and they will come back up, and you get the usual resilience that comes with that.
And are these all described in standard Kubernetes YAML methodologies?
Absolutely. So there's nothing that this is creating for you that you couldn't do manually. Obviously, the production side is more complicated. There's a lot of questions on that side. Who else are you talking to? Do you want one of these components? Where do you get your certificates from? Have you got some intermediates for us, etc.? And so to handhold people through that is a lot easier than them putting those YAML files together themselves. Everything that we're doing here is essentially standard. There's a few daemon sets, a few deployments. We use secrets very extensively and config maps in order to manage that. It's all editable. It all appears like you'd expect it to.
Excellent. Looks like we're all set.
We have got a lot of green ticks. So this is where we hope that this is also going to give us there we go. It's worth saying that you can easily swap this certificate after you come up for a real one. So I'm just going to follow the instructions that were on the previous screen, which I happen to remember. Now we see in the real world, we probably link this to our Active Directory when we were going to production, or maybe to Google Auth or LDAP. There's plugins for all these things available. Here we're just talking to a very simple MySQL database because it's a very good way of just getting a few users up. You can again log in and change that as you see fit. Now I'm just going to use this excellent admin user that happens to be created. There's no concept of a super user within Gospel, but this user's been given permission to create tables and so on. So I believe that is the password for this. Hopefully I won't have to flip back and check it. That would be embarrassing. Now it's usual for it to take a little bit longer to load the first time. No, it's asking me to enroll for OTP, which I'm going to skip. Obviously that impacts on how the security is assessed for the session. You get more trust the better you identify yourself. Now, we'll see that this is actually beginning to cut a few blocks here. It takes a few seconds, as I say, the first time it comes up, because it's just running a little bit of initial startup, and we can actually see blocks coming through in the top right-hand corner there. So we'll catch up in a second. So there we go. Much as this is the Gospel UI, normally you'd communicate with this either through our very easy to use ETL solution, LedgerBridge, which will talk to things like SQL databases, flat files, etc., for getting data in, or you can use the extensive amount of integration options we have for things like SAP, for Salesforce, and SDKs for pretty much all the major development environments you might want to find. .NET, TypeScript, JavaScript, Java, etc. They're all ready to go there. And it's designed to be as easy as possible for you to bring data as close to users as you possibly can. So the paradigm in here, and obviously it's very nicely documented, userguide.gospel.com, and there's also the docs link on the left, is much like any other database, although the data is shared and we're accessing it in this very different blockchain way. You have records, you have views, which are very useful because we have what we term contextual security. You can read a lot more about that on our website, which is a way of very greatly restricting the amount of data any individual can see. You have triggers, which are, some people call them smart contracts. We think like a database, they're still triggers. And watches are a way of communicating outside. This is all PKI based. We actually got issued a certificate as we logged through. Those are transient. They're used so we can identify who a person was for a long time, but we don't want that certificate to live forever. We actually revoke them using certificate pinning when you log out.
I loved the automatic assumption that I was going to use a one-time password system. As someone who's had my data stolen repeatedly, I've moved everything to OTP of some sort.
Absolutely. And the way that we make security decisions is based on a combination of who somebody is, what they're trying to do, and how much we trust that that's true. And it's possible to set a different level of trust for somebody when we know they're the same person, but set a different level of trust when they're logging in from their, Gmail account on their home computer, from somewhere outside the corporate network to when they're logging in with their work active directory, say. And if something changes about the session, we can make decisions, whether they provide OTP. There's a lot of different ways that we can bring that into the security decisions. But we can also say things like we should only share sensitive information where people actually need to see it. If I were a call center agent within PII outsource, or maybe something like a payroll provider or a company managing help desk, I should probably only see information about the person I'm on the phone to. I shouldn't see access to users. And that's a huge reduction in threat surface. But when we combine it with the fact that we're actually logging every single read and write that's made to the system, now this is just a transaction. We wouldn't hit this on a day-to-day basis, but it's this auditable log that actually all three of these peers have agreed what the result of that transaction is, and it's not possible to decrypt it without that consensus. That's very unique to Gospel, and it actually means that we have this immutable history of everything that has happened. We know everything that somebody read or attempted to read. So we know nobody's done anything they're not allowed to, but also because we've got this Byzantine fault tolerance, because the peers have to agree as to what the result is, it means that we also know nobody can do anything that they shouldn't do. You can take one of these peers away, you can unplug it from the network, harder possibly with GCP, and you won't get any data out that you don't already know. It's a very mathematically sound way of doing this, and obviously we can see everything that's happened in there. The last thing in here I'd draw attention to is it's very easy to get access to all the very standard ways of communicating with Gospel and how you can build them in, as well as the docs for them. It's a RESTful API, although there's signing of the transactions into there. So it's all very easy to use Swagger for. As well as that, we have documentation for the SDKs that includes a lot of information about getting started, and there's a lot of other guides for developers on the website now.
Awesome. That's a great demo. Thank you, Reuben.
Thank you.
It looked like that was coming from the marketplace. Is that something that customers can deploy right now?
Absolutely. So right now, if you just search for Gospel within the marketplace, it's the first thing in the menu on the console for GCP. You will be able to do that right now. The minimum requirements are pretty small, and as you saw, it took just a couple of minutes to spin up.
That's fantastic. That's it for the presentation portion of the talk. So please stay tuned for frequently asked questions. We'll be back in less than a minute. We're back. I have so many questions for Reuben, so I'm just going to get started in and ask them right now. Reuben, can you tell me what kind of data breaches could Gospel's technology prevent?
So I think there's a lot of reasons why data breaches happen, but very few of the times it's actually somebody logging into a network who doesn't work for the company and actively stealing that data. It tends to be because data's left somewhere. It shouldn't be visible, or because somebody has the temptation internally of accessing that. So in terms of the first of those categories, by again reducing the amount of data that's available at any time and actually removing the ability for a single entity to make a decision about how that data is accessed, then we're making it much harder for somebody to breach that data. They have to log into multiple servers, potentially in multiple companies, in order to do that. In terms of that insider threat, because we're reducing the attack surface, because we're applying these much more modern security rules, it's much easier to use than IAM, for instance. It's much more straightforward with contextual access control. We're essentially taking the attack surface that's available to somebody speculatively removing that data from all the records. You know, if I send you a spreadsheet, you have access to every record in there, to maybe just one or two records at a time, which just takes the temptation out of it, but it also takes the risk away.
That's awesome. That sounds really valuable. So how much does it cost to use something like Gospel?
So the demo's completely free from our side. You just pay for your GCP usage. And a lot of the time that will run within spare space you've got within a cluster now, because it's not particularly resource intensive. When you move to a real network, we'll help you while you're testing. And then in production, you need to talk to our sales team for a license. They're very friendly. You can get them at support@gospel.tech. And I think very soon it will be available to license on a kind of per hour basis within the marketplace as well. That's coming in the next few months.
And can I share data with people outside of GCP?
So you can. I'd say that your life is usually easier using GCP for this.
I would agree.
At the moment. It's certainly the easiest way to get that up and running. But if there's a company that you're working with that is absolutely insistent that they want to use something else, or maybe that they have a legacy data center that you haven't persuaded them to put Anthos into yet, that's something where you can absolutely run up a Gospel node. Anywhere you can put Kubernetes, you can put Gospel.
Great. I noticed there was a lot of everything was built on GKE in Kubernetes. And I'm curious, what did GKE bring to the table for you that you couldn't find elsewhere?
It's absolute seamless ease of use. And if you compare from how our DevOps guys feel about using GKE to how they've possibly felt about some of the other providers, there's a straightforwardness to how things work, and there's a naturalness to how things work that isn't there, as well as the fact it's much, much closer to the native Kubernetes feel. Marketplace is a great thing as well. We use that internally. As I said, we have Jenkins deployed through there. We also deploy SAP and a few other things that way. It's a really good way of getting things up and running quickly. That's
awesome. So there was a question that came in through the chat around if someone's been using a Hyperledger of some other sort, will that help them understand the Gospel data platform?
I think that a good working knowledge of DLT is a useful thing to have. I think it will help you understand the concepts of what's going on. Gospel is fundamentally different in a lot of ways. I think a working knowledge of conventional databases is as valuable, if not more, especially since a lot of that complexity is hidden away. But you'll find that there's a lot of things that are similar between how we work. We're an endorsed blockchain, same as Fabric is, for instance. We have some common parentage a long way back in history in there, but we're doing a lot of things they're not, and vice versa. So our ability to do consensus on reads, for instance, is fundamentally quite different.
That actually brings me to a question that I have around blockchains in general. One thing that I've read many times is that the whole of the Bitcoin network, for example, consumes on the order of the entire power output of the country of Iceland. And that seems really wasteful. Is that something different than you're doing?
So it's very important to say that you have two fundamental types of distributed ledger networks. You have public and private networks. Now, these public networks need some way of moderating the access of people to them. And one of the best ways that they found of doing that is through these brute force mathematical transactions. In our world, we actually know who the other companies that we're dealing with are. And as a result, we understand the security certificates they have, and there's none of this mining. Now, that has two great things about it. First off, we are not draining an amount of energy roughly equivalent to the amount of sun hitting the United Kingdom on a given day, which I'm very pleased about. Funnily enough, I actually worked out a little while ago that you could feed 300 cats for a year for the amount of energy one CryptoKitties transaction uses, which is, there's a moral question there. But as well as that, it means we can go much faster. So the total throughput of the Bitcoin network, for instance, is in the order of a few hundred transactions per minute, and they're very short, I send money to you transactions, whereas we can write hundreds of much more complex transactions a second on fast hardware because we just don't have this problem of mining.
That's really great news. I also heard that you're pretty big fans of Stackdriver, the monitoring and logging platform built into GCP. Tell me something that you love about it and something that we need to improve.
No, I think everybody's used centralized logging at this point. If you haven't come out of the dark ages, it will make your life much better. Stackdriver is absolutely seamless. It's seamless in how it talks to GKE. It's seamless in how it talks to the other products, and it has the same flexibility you'll see in things like Elk and so on. But what really takes it beyond is the ability to profile processes and debug processes and to see into what's going on within those containers in real time. And from our perspective, it's hugely reduced the amount of time it takes to fix complex distributed problems. Tracing is a marvelous thing, and it's all completely compatible with open census. It really is incredibly valuable to us.
That's awesome. One thing that I wanted to end with was the startup program at Google Cloud. You were a member of that startup program fairly early on. What did you do with all of those credits?
So I think you'll see that we built a really solid, robust GCP-based solution that everybody can get out there and use. And our ability to go and run these large distributed clusters ourselves and check how throughput works and maybe do a lot of things that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do was incredibly valuable. And I think the other support that the startup program provided us, whether it's talking to people within other companies or the advice that have come from yourself, people like Matt Yeager in Europe, Dave Roldan, has been absolutely invaluable to us.
That's awesome. One of the questions that came in through the chat was, if you have a startup and you want to get started with GCP, how do you join the startup program? I would say the easiest way is online. cloud.google.com/startup will totally get you started. Reuben, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming out all the way here from the UK to California. It's been great having you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for tuning in. Please visit Cloud on Air for more content from Google Cloud experts.